and welcome to another exciting show. Boy, we've just about we literally got things working. 1 minute or 30 seconds to go. And tonight, our guest is Nathan Allenby. And good evening, Nathan. And we had
Good evening.
terrible technical problems. He couldn't hear me, and it's going tit chop. Hey, but we got there in the end. Now, what we're doing is Nathan came on in April, and we
Can I stop you for a moment, please?
Mhm.
So we were going to have a chat about this. I'd like to talk tonight about, I'd like to start talking about passivity. And I think this is really important because this is a crisis. So may I just kick off and see how you feel?
Okay, far away.
Science that brighten your way. You're listening to Food for Thought Radio here at FFTradio.com. Food for Thought Radio here at FFTradio.com.
I think that's it. Have we got
Oh, is there
anything
some
more coming on?
music?
Well, let's carry on regardless, because last night we had about 3 minutes of adverts.
All right.
I think we're clear. So, welcome to Food for Thought Radio. So, far away, Nathan.
Okay. So anyway, I've been organising some protests recently, and I've found how difficult it is to get people's cooperation. And people are, to be quite honest with you, scared to death.
Yeah.
So I've been what you might call a political activist, other words that you could use for it, democratic activist, I might prefer, for about 38 years. I started in 1988. That's when I started organising meetings rather than just going along to them. And I've never, ever felt afraid of going to a meeting, organising a rally, organising a protest. I've never felt that anything bad's going to happen to me for what I'm doing. But now people do. And I've had people come and say to me, if I take part in this, I'm afraid I could lose my job. I've got student debt and I've got a mortgage and I just can't afford to lose my job. And people, now, gosh, I'm going to protect them. I don't want people to get into trouble. I've thought of all sorts of ways that they're not going to be identified. We thought out some costumes where their faces can't be seen. We've been through all this. We've tried to reassure them, even if but they're scared. So that's the first thing. We're suddenly in this climate of fear. And I think something has changed in the world. So, when I was young, when I started out, we didn't have cancel culture. We didn't have the threats and the violence. Let's talk about that. There is actually, it's not happened to me. I've never seen it, never been involved in it. But if people don't like you these days, they'll do things that are quite scary. Yes. But at the same time, look, in the time I've been an activist, I don't think I've even never had anybody say a rude word to me. I've certainly not been threatened with violence. I've not experienced any violence. I think this is something deeper in people's psychology. People are actually afraid. And there are a number of reasons for this. But one of the things I've noticed, and I think it's worth talking about this, is passivity. It's a theme I've mentioned a couple of times before, and it's a theme I'm going to get back to because it's probably the most important problem in how can we call it, alternative politics today. So you've got people who, how can I put this? You speak to an audience and people will listen, they'll agree with you, they'll applaud, but they won't actually do anything. So if you've asked them to do something, you've made some suggestions, well, they won't actually do it. I'm not asking them to do difficult things. I'm not asking them, say, to sign their name on the line to be legally liable to start whatever it is, a community business. I'm not asking them to do anything like that. I'm just asking them to, say, for example, use cash instead of always paying by card or phone. I'm asking really simple things that anybody can do, and they
I
won't
agree.
do it.
Well, it's
And
funny you should
so,
say that. Yeah. Yeah, because what I was going to say is, by the way, Alice Gorge has said, I don't want to put you off your mode of thought, but 38 years, what is your best achievement, Nathan?
oh, so the first project might have been one of the most successful. So up on Tyneside, the local water company wanted to build a toxic waste incinerator, one on Tyneside and one on Teesside. And we managed to make that a public issue. That was the first thing. We got its attention, and then we got it stopped. And then the water company wanted to build a clinical waste incinerator. And again, it wasn't, it's not just that they wanted to do this, but what they wanted to do was a very bad idea. It wasn't well thought through, wasn't a very good design. It's not just, and we managed to stop that one too. So that was a success early on in my career. I think one of the main things I've done is I've actually tried to make people aware. And in the process of all of this, I've actually become aware myself. So somebody asked me, how much did you actually change? Well, I changed myself. That's one of the most important things. Every time I got involved, I actually learned something. Sometimes I learned a bit of humility, actually. So I got to see the problems that other people have to live with in their lives. People for whom pollution is an immediate issue. So people whose lives are made a misery by constant stink from a chemical works, or they've got like a toxic flock, like a dust that settles on their window ledges from, say, I mean, they used, mind you, this is in the days we had industry.
Well, that's right.
They've solved the pollution problem now. We just don't have any industry.
Well, that's it. And Matilda says, Warrior says, you've been very lucky, Nathan, not having any problems, with fear and that with protests. And this is a question I've got for you: is that a hussar hat you've got there, Nathan? Because that you moved over a bit now. But when you move a little bit over to that's it. It looks like you've got a hat on. That's it. Makes it look as if you've got a hat on your head. Now, I think for the next question, I mean, I don't know if you want to get on further, but there's a few little questions coming on. But I think if we okay, and I think I could answer this one. What do protests and marches accomplish in the long run? I think we're talking about when you started 38 years ago, that was a very different world we lived in to now. And I think there's been a tidal change.
So I'd like to mention, in fact, a lot had changed by the time I started. So Margaret Thatcher had come to power in 1979. She'd been in power for 9 years by the time I picked this up. And we lived in the climate, in the 1970s, people protested all the time. So in the 1980s, after Margaret Thatcher, people realized the government wasn't listening. You could march, you could protest, and it made no difference. And so a lot of people got very dispirited. People stopped even making the effort. What was the point in having a protest when nobody was going to listen? And there were some cases where the police actually horse charged crowds and beat them up and all this kind of thing. Never happened to me. I was never in that situation. So I was actually successful, and I wasn't trying to organize let's talk about me personally. this is the groups that I was involved in and the campaigns that I was working with. We were not trying to do this type of mass protest. We were being very much more focused and specific, and we were drawing attention to issues. We were working with the media, and back then, and by contrast with today, we found it quite easy to get access to the media. And if we had a good story and a well made case, they were interested in hearing from us. And we had little difficulty getting reported. Today, it's not like that. I mean, we have, a lot more struggles to face. At the same time, there are some fights that are still worth fighting. So I'm not into demonstrations. I'm not into protests. I'm into pointing out very often where something's really wrong and where there's stupidity, and making a case for something different.
I
And
think you got a good point there. Sorry, I hope you don't think I'm chiming in, but I think you got a good point.
go
I
ahead.
think we got to use counter subversion. They're using subversion against us, and we've got to counter it and be more cunning than they have. Because years ago, yes, you could contact your local paper and they'd be interested. I mean, they'd be interested if a cat got stuck up a tree. I mean, they were desperate for news. Now, local newspapers don't exist. I mean,
Yes,
a few years ago, you used to get these freebie newspapers, and excuse my language, it sounded like diarrhea coming through your door. You used to get loads of them. They've gone. There's not one now that I know of in my area. The local newspaper, I don't know where that's gone. That's shrunk. It used to be
I can
huge.
explain that to you. I can explain that. So in the old days, that was how advertising happened. People paid for adverts and they got put in a local free newspaper. The
Yeah,
adverts paid for the paper. Well, now those adverts have gone on to social media. So people advertise things on Facebook Marketplace or eBay or whatever else, and they do not advertise with papers. That's why they don't exist. And that's
yeah,
why over 95% of local journalists, probably, the majority of all journalists, lost their jobs. And I know journalists, they've been telling me their stories. There was a pair of lads were the last journalists on the South Shields Gazette. And basically, they were formerly in a building where there were something like 100 journalists, and they were the last two, and they moved out to a unit in an industrial estate about the size of a lock-up garage. And that was what was left of the paper.
that's right.
And in Newcastle, a similar story, huge building full of journalists, a printing press, all of the equipment that you used to
Hmm.
associate with a large regional newspaper. And now you've got about 3 or 4 people in a small unit above the local sports centre. And, gosh, what's happened? Well, of course, social media has stolen their lunch. And
That's right.
unfortunately, social media does not provide coverage of stories. It takes the advertising, it doesn't actually provide journalism.
Well, now it's churnalism because all they do is just churn over what somebody else says, and it's shock horror all the time. It was the old saying, was it? Dog bites man, that isn't news. Man bites dog, that is news. But
Yeah.
thank you very much, everybody, for putting questions in block capitals. It helps me so much. That really is appreciated. Thank you very much. And the Kingston Whittler, he's got the first question. Hi, Nathan. As a localist and an introvert, yes, I'm an introvert, but seriously, how can I go about getting my neighbours together without worrying about their reaction? They are lovely, but very asleep.
Oh, depends upon your neighbours, doesn't it? So it depends where you live, depends upon your neighbourhood. Um, I'd probably have to know a bit more about who they were. So forgive me, you might think this is a bit weird, but I used to put a notice up in my front door. In the glass pane of my front door, I would put a notice up, telling people sign a petition or object to this proposal or whatever else. It it's actually people came and talked to me, and it often worked. So there are lots of. If you've got something practical to offer people in terms of a solution, people are interested. So half the time, of course, people see something, they don't like what's happening, and they just grumble because they don't know what to do about it. If you can offer them something to do that is actually within their grasp, not too difficult, well, they'll be quite pleased. And I would make
Right.
it very easy for them.
That's great. I mean, I can understand what Kingston and Whitler are saying because people don't believe it, but I'm actually introvert as well, very introvert. And I mean, I've been along to things, do's and things, and people didn't even know I was there. I was so quiet, seriously. I do find problems with crowds, so, but actually, it seems there's been a bit of a love match going on in the chat, and it says Eric's dating stream. Laugh out loud. Yeah, go to Screwfix. I went there's a crap dating agency. They matched me up with a set of socket spanners. I don't know quite why. Right. Now, Alice Gorgeous says, Nathan, why not go to the root cause and withdraw your consent to be governed and organise a mass national sit down?
Okay, well, I do that every day.
I'm doing it now.
Yeah. So I think the trouble is you'd have to get enough people to sit down to make it worth the trouble. So I think people did do sit down protests in the past. I know people who, this isn't me, but I know people who used to sit down, block a street, and then they'd get, one of these D-locks, bike locks, and padlock themselves to the police van and all that kind of thing. Well, no, that's not me. I pick things that are, how can I put it?
Safe.
Yes, indeed, exactly.
Yeah.
So the sort of things that I do, and you might think this is inconsequential, but actually I think it makes a difference. So local council parking schemes, I used to have quite a rate of success in objecting to those, and I had a few stopped, and I knew how the system worked, and I knew how to make objections that counted. So I mean, there are lots of things that people don't realise. If you get 1,000 people to sign a petition, that counts as one objection. If you get 30 people to send in an individual postcard, that counts as 30 objections.
That's interesting.
And so, knowing little things like this, rather than leaving a petition on the desk, I would leave 30 postcards and ask people to fill in a postcard, and that we'd take the postcards in for them. And in this case, the local business owner. I mean, I went up and down the high street, and I told the business owners that this is going to affect you, your business, your custom, and that made them motivated. They wanted to help, so they made sure the customers filled in the card for them. So anyway, I went along the street and I took in, a box of cards, and suddenly, rather than getting one petition, which was counted as one objection to the parking scheme, they got 100 postcards, and that counted as 100 objections.
That's interesting. Well, where I live,
when you've been an activist, you learn the rules.
Yeah, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you there. But what I was going to say is, where I live, they put up a housing estate, and loads of people, almost everyone was against it, except for the people that were selling their land. And what the building developer did, he employed, or whoever it was, a public relations organisation. And what they did, they spread a rumour that it's going ahead anyway, so it's pointless objecting to it. And I haven't sent it to you yet. I've lost it. Well, I don't. It's somewhere on my computer. I actually sent a 25-page report in, and the council were absolutely fantastic. They ignored it, and everybody. And what they did, what this public relations group did, was illegal. They actually made up letters and sent them to the council from all the way around the country, fictitious, because I looked into it, praising the development to the hilt. And I contacted the council and they said, "Oh, we can't see any, there's no ill doing here. There's no wrongdoing." And of course, they got it through. So I won't say who it was, but quite honestly, it was a completely and utterly fraud, totally. And when I went to the meeting where the count what do you call it, planning meeting, where the public are allowed in, I sat there and he said at the beginning of the meeting, "This is going ahead anyway, but so we just got to go through the the motions." And afterwards, in the lobby, the local councillors were shaking hands with the building developers and going down the local pub or Masonic altogether. That's how corrupt
Yeah.
it was. So that's a problem. That the corruption is so deep in a lot of these councils, it's difficult to object.
So yes, there may be that, but there is another thing as well. So I think you have to realise that local government is under a lot of pressure from central government, national government.
Yeah.
So there will be a directive from national government that they have to, for example, provide so many new homes in their area. And, if they've got to build so many thousand new homes, they will find it very difficult to turn a scheme down. So, whether or not this PR company put in fraudulent letters of support may not have been the issue. What may have been the more significant issue may be what was coming down from national government.
But look at it from the other point of view, Nathan. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you.
That's all right.
We pay local and national governments wages, and I said this to one of my neighbours, and they looked at me as if I just got out of a flying saucer. I said we should change our attitude, and that is, if they say you've only got a minute to speak, we say we pay your wages. We'll speak for as long as we want. Okay. We abide by our rules, not yours. So shut up or we'll stop paying their council tax. That will make them wake up. And the trouble is, people won't stick together. If everybody en masse just said, "No, we're not paying the council tax, get stuffed," because quite honestly, council tax is fraud anyway. All tax is fraud. And I think the idea of ignoring government out of existence and we just go ahead and do what we should believe we should do, which is the moral thing. Why should we bow down to an authority that has been imposed upon us? This idea of voting is nonsense, but it's been imposed. We don't want that imposition. We're quite capable of working and living our own lives and working things out for ourselves. What about that sort of attitude? Is it too stroppy?
So I would say with a lot of these things, the thing is, can you make it work? And if you're going to get people to create a campaign of mass civil disobedience, it better be a lot of people. So if you only get 1% of the population to refuse to pay their council tax, that's probably not enough. What percentage of people refuse to pay the poll tax? It was quite a lot. I would suggest it was probably at least 20%. Now, they did pursue people about that, but a lot of people managed to evade it, particularly in Scotland. But, you've got to have an effective campaign of disobedience. It's not enough to just have, half a dozen people refuse to pay your council tax, because all they'll do is one of the legal penalties that they have available If there's just a few of you, they can pick you off one by one. If there's, half the borough, well, it starts to get a lot harder. They have to start to understand why it's happening. And so getting back to what we were saying before, what does protest achieve? And I don't think that protest is, in fact, a weapon in itself. So when you see demonstrations and things like this that people organise, some people think that you organise a protest, you go along, complain, and that's it. That achieves something, and that's the end of the story. No, it's hardly the beginning of the story. The whole point about a demonstration is actually to gather the troops, muster the troops. It's it's only there really to advertise that you exist, and to try and get the public to do something else, something that's actually meaningful, because the demonstration on the protest by itself doesn't actually achieve anything in most cases. Sometimes it does. So one of the big battles at the minute, and going back to the death of local newspapers and the fact that the government today has a policy of censorship, narrative control, about shutting dissent out of the mainstream media. This makes it very difficult for any objections to the government's programme to get a voice and to organise. How can you reach supporters without the help of the media? How can you make people aware that there is actually a campaign? I mean, in the old days, it was quite simple. You could send in a press release, the local paper would print it, and enough people would respond to get something done. You would, in fact, I don't know if people have ever analysed the articles in newspapers, but most newspaper articles seem to start with somebody having sent in a press release. It'll be some kind of campaign group. You read the article, and at the bottom of the article, there'll be the punchline. The punchline is, there is a consultation on this project that is open until whatever it is, the 16th of June. You can send objections in to this address. And now that is actually the punchline. That is why somebody held a protest. This is why, all of these things happen. It's actually to make people aware that they can use their democratic rights and object to the scheme. If enough people object to the scheme, they might withdraw it, or they might modify it, or they might be called in for a public inquiry, whatever the business. There'll be an objective that a campaign group, certainly if I'm involved in the campaign, there'll be an objective, some way of actually stopping the thing. And having a protest would only be a way of advertising to the public what you want them to do.
Big problem, though. Have you found that the press muddle things up and get things wrong? Because I've found that loads of times. That they've literally, you sent a press release. Now, when my father wrote his book, I sent press releases out to the press, because in those days there was no internet, and that was about the only way you could promote things. I'm not a book publisher, and I found 9 times out of 10, the journalists, even though it's a press release, put a load of invented nonsense in it. And one of them said that, I mean, my dad was in World War II, and one of them said my dad was in Vietnam. Where I got that one from? He muddled the Vietnam War up with World War II. And people were sending in saying, well, he couldn't have. And they were taking what the journalists said and sending letters to us that were insulting, thinking the book was sort of made up or something, because the journalists had put such rubbish in. Another one said that my dad was, a radio operator that was in the Far East. He muddled that story up with over the River Kwai film. I mean, my dad has nothing to do with the Far East. He was in Europe. Things like that. And and little things like one journalist was interested in an incident my dad saw with a Sunderland flying boat, and he said, "Oh, it was a seaplane." No, a seaplane is different. A seaplane's got
Yeah.
floats on it. A flying boat is literally what it says it is. It's a flying boat. So people are saying, "Oh, he doesn't know the difference between couldn't have been there because he doesn't know the difference between a flying boat and a seaplane." Just because the bloody journalist put a bit of his own stupidity in it, and this was the problem all the way through. I gave up with them because none of them, even they got a press release, all added fiction, loads of fiction in, and got things wrong.
Clearly,
Couldn't understand it. Yeah.
clearly the press release wasn't long enough. There wasn't enough to fill the required column inches. They had to put something else in.
No. What it was a couple of pages, but they'd literally just muddled it around for the sake of, I don't know, artistic or bullshit, basically. But it was just corrupted. And I only found about 3 or 4 journalists who really knew what they were talking about. The rest were just I don't know. I think it's just to sell newspapers, hype things up. I mean, they like to put a load of hype in, as if my dad was, "Oh yeah, Gunno, let's get out." And one bloke write a load of crap, and I said, "Excuse me, you can't print that." I said, "That's the complete opposite to my father." I went in with the lads. We called. I said, "What is this?" It just made it all up. And like I said, I sent you a press release. Yeah, well, and I thought this bloke would be watching John Wayne films and thought, the war was all about John Wayne. So anyway, sorry, I'll get carried away now. But no, it was frustrating. It really was. But you were saying.
So
Nathan,
I've had
sorry.
difficult experiences with journalists, but not as bad as that. I mean, you've got to be very careful how you deal with. Hey, journalists, past tense. There aren't any now. The number left is vanishingly small.
Well, that's right.
The problem we have today is, so in the past, the name of the game very often is getting somebody to acknowledge that there is an objection. Now, in the old days, it would take as little as writing a letter to the local paper. Dear editor, the editor, the letters page. And generally speaking, if you wrote a significant criticism of something the council was doing, then a council officer would feel obliged to respond. And that would bring the whole issue out into the public. It would very simple and effective way to make the public aware. Now, what's the point I'm coming to? Those letters pages don't exist anymore.
No.
And there isn't anything which will make, for example, a local council or national government, for that matter, acknowledge that there is dissent against what they're doing. And here I'm not talking about, say, I don't know, rebuilding the local school or something like that. We're talking about, for example, digital ID or something much larger. The government doesn't have to acknowledge that people don't like it. Facial recognition. They just ignore the fact that there is actually a significant percentage of the population that is deeply uneasy about this. And nobody is... It beats crime. It stops pedophiles. It stops drugs, whatever. There's always an excuse that they make, very thin, not very plausible, but nobody challenges this stuff. The fact that there's a substantial percentage of the population that is deeply disturbed by this doesn't get reported in the mainstream media because effectively it's curated, it's censored. The narrative control.
Well, Alice Gorgeous says, this is a bit of sarcasm here. Nathan, have you tried writing to Satan to ask him to be gentle with you? Well, writing to the government's the same, really. Writing to Satan, aren't you?
Yes, so So, in fact, you're making a very good point there. Um, when I'm actually aware, if you look at something like digital ID, let's start talking about realistic policies,
Hmm.
realistic approaches to dissent. Of course, I'm aware that the government is never going to do what we want because we ask them to. And in the case of something like digital ID, it's not even this government's project.
No.
It's they're obeying orders from above, from globalization. This project was designed by international bodies, and it's been given to national governments to implement. So no, I don't think that however much we protest, that in itself is going to do anything. But there are things that we can do that will make a difference. And they're actually quite small things, like for example, using cash. Now I think, oh, how does that stop digital ID? Well, because digital ID is all about gathering together the different types of media that you use. When I talk about media, I mean things like bank cards, bus passes, everything that's got a serial number embedded in it somewhere is connected by a system called, um, hey, what's it called? For things like bank cards, it's called a commercial certification authority,
Hmm.
which is connected to a population register, a national population register. So if you don't use those things, you're not making that data.
Hmm.
So yes, there are a number of different dimensions here. One is to actually make people aware, make people understand how the system works. But then the other thing is to actually get them to do a little bit themselves, not to feed the system. And this is one of the things that I find most frustrating. You ask people to do something very small. Uh, Here's a great one. Yeah, this is actually so. I try to encourage people not to buy alcohol with their phone. Now, this makes complete sense
Hmm.
because not only are you telling when you pay for alcohol with your phone, you're telling the bank because they process the transaction. They see, it's a purchase at whatever it is, 1 o'clock at the morning at X bar, and they know exactly what's happening there. But Google knows even more because you took your phone. It's monitoring you there. It knows the detail of the transaction. Google collects all of this data. Why are you doing it? Why this isn't this something that you want to keep private? Because Google will work out where you were, what time of the night, who you were with. You don't want to share this information with anybody, really. This is private. You don't want to share it with a company like Google or a data broker or somebody who's going to be making a social credit score on you. And yet, and the other thing is, of course, when you've had a few drinks, you spend too freely. If you take cash, you only take as much cash as you're prepared to spend. And when you run out, you've got to stop drinking. It's
Precisely.
called, yeah,
But they might think I'm a boozer, see, because you can actually use vodka in a spray bottle as a dry cleaner. Now, I don't take my clothes to a dry cleaner because, quite honestly, the only thing that needs to be dry cleaned is anything that's leather or suede. Basically, suede.
yeah, is that
Everything else can
right?
be washed in the washing machine. But if you want
Yeah,
to freshen something up that's been worn and you don't want to wash it too many times, obviously something like wool and things like that, as good as dry cleaning is vodka sprayed over it, and that's what they use in theatre for the yeah, that's a little trick. So I could be buying vodka and people think, blimey, he's a PA, Yeah, piss artist on vodka when I'm not. I'm not drinking a drop of it. I don't like it, and you just use for spraying clothes. So it's a little tip for everybody there. Now, friends, follow me for more money saving tips. Yeah. Right now, let's have a look here. We got a lot of good stuff in chat tonight. Here we go. We got here. Good people and good stuff that they're writing. That's what I meant. One. Sam says, "Can we trust humans?" No. We need a state to protect us. No. let's put humans that want power in charge of that state. It's more than just a contradiction. It's a mental pathology. What do you think? That's a good one. Good questions.
So all I can do is tell you what somebody else said to me. Why would the government lie to us? That's it. Why wouldn't you trust the government?
I was thinking today, where there's government, there's poverty, unemployment. Why? And hardship. Why? Because they create those problems to justify their existence. Because you look at societies that don't have government, i.e. the Amish, there's no unemployment. And they've got a perfectly adequate health service. So, when you think about it, why? Because there's no restrictions, there's no taxes and things like that. I mean, let's face it, if you started your own business, you'd be taxed to buggery. You'd have tax forms coming through. That's why people are saying, I can't be bothered. Stuff it. I mean, I spent hours and hours and hours doing my tax one time. Drove me up the wall, it did.
Mm-hmm.
I was unpaid civil. Everybody, all people that work for themselves are unpaid civil servants.
Yeah.
Why? It's just. But sorry, back to this question by Sam. So, what's your view on that, Nathan?
What, on the fact we need more government and we need to trust our politicians more? Of course. What can I say?
Yeah. Well, was it Adrian War that?
The thing is, what can you do about it? And I think the thing is, there's a questionnaire going with tonight's program.
That's right. Hang on, I'll put it on if I can. I'll see if I can find it. Do you want me to put it on there? Questionnaire.
Yes, please. We could even read it out for people who are on radio.
That's right. That's a good point. See, I can't fool us. We're not stupid. Right, here it is.
Shall I read it out, or would you like
please
to?
read it. Please read it. Well, please read it out. I mean, I could. What I'll do, I'll stick it on the do flop and on the caption scanner thing, and see if it's scanned. Let's have a look.
So this is not an exhaustive list, but I have tried to write down some of the more popular theories of how social change is brought about. So here we go. Here's the question. Have you got me?
I've got you on there. I've got the actual questionnaire and the.
I'll still read it for the people who are on the radio. I'll read it for the people who are on the radio. So here we are. We've got 12 questions here. How do you think positive social change can be brought about? Oh, it's a bit small for me, actually, this. I better put my stronger glasses on.
Well, shall I read it from the top? 0%.
You can, if you like.
Top down by
Top down by paternalism of an enlightened leadership. So there we go. We trust our leaders to bring social change by their good judgment.
That got 0. Second one is creating government bureaucracy to pull best talent and plan centralised projects to benefit all. Guess how many votes that got? 0.
Lots, would it?
No, 0.
Really?
I wonder.
But actually, that is actually a mainstream theory of political change.
Yeah,
it's got
somewhere.
So several political philosophers advocate that. Right, here's another one. So a movement of ideas describing what is wrong with society and how to put it right to guide leaders.
9% that got.
Mhm.
9% of
that's,
voters. Not bad. And do you want to
And then the
read the
next
next one? Mm-hmm.
Yep. Protest and demonstrations making everyone aware society is unjust, and then democracy will do the rest.
0 votes.
Ah,
And the next one is
So-
conflict and class tension to create political awareness, thus irresistible dynamic of social change. That got 0 votes.
that is actually, in a nutshell, the theory behind Marxism.
Yeah.
And yet, well, so there's a minority that believe in that explicitly. It's probably worth it. So
Well, we're
here's
very
another one.
intelligent people that follow us, you see. So now the next one is infiltrate institutions and organise to place people supporting our views in power. That got 14%.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's not bad. And you can still, if you haven't already voted, you can still vote on it. It's on the Fockham Hall Telegram page. So if you want to vote on it, it could change. The end of the program, we'll see if it has changed. Now we've got through civil war, smash existing structures of power to create a blank slate. That got 4%.
wow.
And then finding a political party or leader to support and voting for them at an election. That got 0%. And then the next one is great popular movements representing public opinion, which politicians must court to win elections. That got 0 votes. And the next
Really?
one is ignoring elections and politics, build our own cooperative bodies and mutual banks. That got 47%, the highest of the lot. And it's 20. And now the next one is rediscovering traditional models where local communities organised for their mutual support. That got 28%. And then last one is it is impossible for humans to bring about positive change. We must have to trust religion and pray to God. That got 0 votes. And the total number of people that voted in this was 21 votes. And if you haven't already voted, you can vote on it now. It's still open. So
Yes,
you know.
I hope people do vote, because we'd like a larger survey of what
Yes.
the audience thinks. It would be really good to hear your views.
So vote.
that
Whenever
is
Francis, vote. Sorry.
That is not an exhaustive list, as I'm sure you realise, of the number of theories of how political change can be brought about. It's merely the maximum number of options that Telegram would allow us in a poll. So we had to knock out a couple.
Agree. Well, Alice Gould just says Eric's chat aren't stupid. I agree there, 100% agree. And Haji said, I agree with Sixblade, who is Survival Steve. Yes, so do I. But yes, that was quite interesting.
So actually, there's a point here, and it's something like this. Each of those options that we presented there is not just an idea of what society should be like; it's how that can be achieved. So, pardon me.
Bless you, my son.
Bless you. Pray to God.
Do you want an advert break? It's a Fockham advert. No, seriously, it's
you can have one of those adverts.
Yeah, let's have a Fockham advert if I can find a bleeding thing. Where is it? So talk amongst yourselves. Now this is a Fockham advert. Of course, it's very clean, and I mean, we're I'm trying to find where it is. Right, here we go. Let's hope it plays. Hello. Are you suffering from severe constipation? Well, your problems are over with the Fockham Hall Alfonso restaurant. Yes, Alfonso restaurant, guaranteed hygiene free. I'd like the chef surprise, please. What does that consist of? Well, it's the surprise because the chef dropped his hemorrhoid cream in the curry. Oh, I think I got the shits already. Yes, come to the Alfonso restaurant in Fockham Hall for all your... So there we go. Nothing filthy there, was there? No. Oh, bloody hell, it's made you cough, hasn't it? You been to the Alfonso restaurant? But, no, I'm not now, jokes here, but no, I thought, well, I better, there was adverts last night, so I thought I better put my own advert in. So you'll be queuing there, won't you? But anyway, what we got here? There's some comedians. Right. Now.
So anyway, coming back to this.
Okay.
So a lot of people have got these ideas about what sort of society they want to have or what would be a really good idea. But the question is how you can bring it about. So I know people who say, for example, they faced with digital ID, they say, well, wouldn't it be better to have this? You know, or wouldn't it be better if we had this law that protected us? So I know somebody who came up with actually quite a good proposal for a digital privacy law and to protect our privacy from snooping. And it's really, she came up with what is a very good proposal. The problem with this is nobody's going to make it law. So when you come up with a good idea, the important question is, and how are you going to make this happen? So when we look at these 12 options that we just described for how to bring about beneficial social change, we've actually got to consider what's the mechanism, what's the process by which you're going to make this happen. So you might have a utopian idea of how the world should be, but if you can't actually think of something that's going to bring it about, it's actually not attainable. And you've actually got to have a process of achieving the change that is in itself going to be beneficial. So the cause and the effect have got to resemble each other. You know, you can't have this Marxist idea of the means justify the end. So you've got to do something horrible to bring about something good. You've actually because of course, if you do something horrible, it's going to bring about something horrible. If you want to achieve something good, then you actually need a process to get there that is in itself good. Now, because ultimately the cause and the effect are going to resemble each other. So the whole process of bringing about the change should actually resemble the change that you want to bring about. If that makes any sense to everyone.
That makes sense. But on a previous show, you were saying that you went to India and they had started cooperatives and in very poor regions of was it Andalusia in Spain? I was talking about they started cooperatives, but the people were desperate because when you're on your back, the only way you can go is upwards because they're on their back. I mean, the people in India, it was starvation, and these poor ladies who were left alone and that, they had to do something to survive. And apart from, and they were decent folk, they're very strict in India, and starting, cooperatives of machine sewing and doing what they're skilled at. But the thing is, people are too comfortable at the moment. They won't do anything because they're too comfortable. You see, the thing is, unless it hits them in the face. For example, you walk along the street and you stumble on a floor, the path is all uneven and uneven, and you stumble and you hurt yourself, and you claim off the council, and that has personally affected you. And if the council said sod off, then you'd find other people that stumbled on that path, and you'd start a protest because it's personally affected you. But at the moment, the supermarket shelves are not fully empty. They're getting less, but they're not fully empty. People are still comfortable, and I think that is the problem. When you look at the protests that happened after the First World War, when this country almost was overthrown, and it was all the newspapers were told to put it on the back pages and small little columns and things like that. The people were desperate then, very desperate, and
So,
they're not desperate yet. And that is the sad fact. And their lives haven't been. We've just got this slow creep of totalitarianism all the time, so that people don't
the
know.
boiling frog.
Boiling frog. That's right. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, if you go on a protest, is anybody there that's half starved? No. Is anybody starving? No. If they were starving, they'd bloody protest, all right, wouldn't they? You know.
So this is one of the points that I would actually like to make. I think you've actually touched upon something very serious. So a lot of politics is associated with, high-minded ideals, but it doesn't actually want to address real people. But we actually have a society at the minute where a lot of people are very isolated and unhappy. They've got no community, they've got no support. So say, for example, we've got people who have to work ridiculously long hours to just keep a roof over their head. Or there are people who are on precarious employment and, they're on 0 hours contracts and they don't know how much work they're going to get in any particular week. Or they're asked to come in and work horrible split shifts where, they have to go to work, come home, go back again, and they spend the whole day traveling to and from work and no time for themselves, can't get anything done. It feels like they're working the entire day. Or you've got people who live miserable, lonely lives and they've got no support. And their quality of life, their human connection is almost zero. There's the real loneliness is a real problem in our society. Or we could look at the problems, say, for example, of the victims of these rape gangs, and nobody wants to help them. And everyone, when they face a major problem, seems to be facing it on their own. They're not facing it, with any kind of support. So, and there are people, you might call this human weakness, but there are people who, for example, fall prey to gambling addiction or other types of addiction. There's, these are all symptoms of social problems. There are people.
Pardon me. That's a bit of a tickly cough. You need a bit of honey there, mate.
Oh dear. There are people, there are all sorts of what you might think of as personal problems, but they're the accumulation of social problems. Social problems always come down to individuals. When society breaks down, individuals face these problems on their own. That's when they become problems. And we don't recognize this as being a crisis. We're not actually facing it together because our communities have been broken. There are all sorts of things that have happened to us which have driven us apart. The globalists have aimed for the last 50 years to create an atomized society where we're all individuals and we don't support each other. And this is, in fact, how it's expressed today in our lives. We live wretchedly. an increasing number of us have wretched
Mm.
lives.
That's right. That's right. I
So,
mean,
so,
I agree.
so actually, rather than talking about politics, perhaps we ought to talk about how we can make each other's lives better. So, if we were, actually doing something to help each other, we would find that that was in fact empowering. That we would talk to other people about the other things in our lives, that we could see are affecting our quality of life. We would become politically effective as well if we were part of a community. So they've broken us down, and it was in fact an explicit, stated, calculated policy. It isn't something that we've just surmised or we've inferred from circumstances that we see around us. This was actually stated that they wanted to break up our communities to reduce our capacity for resistance. This is something that happened to exploit us. And the way to, put this right is, in fact, to resist being broken apart, to actually insist upon spending more time with other people, making friends, and living more meaningfully. So I can't begin to say, but what did people used to do for entertainment? So I can remember that my great grandmother had a piano. You had a piano in your house if you wanted your friends to
Our
come
parents
round.
did. Yes.
Yeah, and it's because if you wanted to party, there was no record player. You could not put music on. That you had to have somebody play music in your house, and so there were things like this that people did. They would invite their friends around for a party. If you wanted music, you had to play it yourself, or you had to get a friend to play it for you. This is, what am I trying to say here?
They had their own entertainment, and they took they had more responsibility because they were a wartime generation, and they had to be responsible to get through the war. And when you think about it, after the First World War, people were literally starving on the streets,
Yes,
and they were desperate. And I think the last big protest we had, which came from the heart, was the miners' strike. People would say,
yes,
well, it's the march against the Iraq war. Yes, but they weren't protesting for themselves as such, whereas the miners were desperate to to keep the mines, and they knew that they're being destroyed. So that's it. But we got Survival Simon has just joined us. Hello,
survival.
Survival Simon. And I don't know who Survival Simon is.
Hello, am I on?
You certainly are on. Hello, Survival Simon. I don't think we've spoken before. So pleased to meet you. And are you often in chat? Oh, hello. Oh,
Hello.
it's
Hi,
Steve,
Nathan.
isn't it?
Yeah, I changed my name because I figured, the last survival Steve, I don't think his message was getting through enough, so I've just changed my name. So somebody new on the show might maybe
We could
make an
join.
impact.
Yeah, it could be joined by was it Professor Simon, who isn't a professor. Have you seen him?
Oh, I
The
don't
bearded
believe I
bloke
have.
from France. Yeah, he's from Scotland, but he lives in France for some unknown reason.
Oh wow.
Yes, he sends letters out, I think. Anyway, we were just talking about people. I personally think people are not desperate enough to do something. And it's only when they get desperate they'll do something. And the last real desperation thing was the miners' strike, I think, because the miners
Okay.
were protesting to save their livelihoods that have been for generations been down the mines. And we had the most advanced mining in the world with very few accidents, and they were getting machines to get the coal out, and it was even more technical. It wasn't blokes stripped to the waist bashing away like this, like in the Victorian times. No, it was actual robots that were churning the coal out. And most of the people in the coal industry at that time, in the early 80s, were very technical people who knew coal and mining inside out. So anyway, over to you, gentlemen. Please fire away, whatever
Well,
you wish.
on elaborating on that point, one thing that the social engineers, who pretty much are behind a lot of the things that we encounter in the world, i.e., the conditions that we have to tolerate, are largely determined by social engineers who perfectly understand the complexities of the human mind and how consciousness and human behavior works, which is one of the
Right.
reasons. Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing Nathan agrees with me on that point, and simply because if you understand how the human mind works and how human behavior works, you understand how to exploit it. Now, the average person doesn't wish to exploit his fellow friend, neighbor, family member to get a leg up, but social engineers do. The people who basically fill the appointments in positions of power, they're usually psychopathic. They don't usually have any level of care or sympathy for everybody else or anybody else. They'd shaft their own grandmother if truth be known. A lot of them they'll. So therefore, if you can abide by behaviours which are usually intolerable to other members of the population, then you can easily garner a great deal of power. Now, one of those positions, if you like, one of the conditions of understanding the human mind is how fragile we are when it comes to fighting back when faced with tyranny. And the human condition is full of this. Three leading principles kind of garner this collectivized thought pattern. And these happen to be known in the Freemasonic and secret societies as what's known as the three assassins, the three Masonic assassins, who murdered as far as the allegory goes, the three Masonic assassins murdered Hiram Abiff. Hiram Abiff represents the higher mind, and the three Masonic assassins represent ignorance, apathy, and cowardice. So ignorance, apathy, and cowardice are the three conditions that generally enable the human population, the vast majority of the human population, to become members of enslaved human livestock, which is what generally population is. Human livestock were enslaved to a group of psychopaths.
Yeah, I agree with you. How are we going to get away from them, though? Because my feeling is that they're probably shooting themselves in the foot. That's my optimistic feeling. They're going too far this time. Maybe.
I mean, if I was to answer
Well-
that, I would say definitely we're not getting away from it. Why? Because we are literally not doing the required work. And this is, I mean, I'm quite happy to go down that route. The required work in order to reach a better position within the human dynamics of how the human psyche works is very prescriptive. There is requirements for that. And if we're not following those requirements, I mean, it goes under a principle of natural law. It falls into the principles known as non-aggression and the self-defense principle. It also falls into, I'll caveat that by saying, what needs to be understood and adhered to is something called objective morality. Sadly, because if I was to mention most of those terms, some people, even in the truth community, would probably have some degree, a semblance of an idea what that notion means. But fundamentally, most people would be like this. Mate, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking. It's all gibberish. So therefore, I'm going to ignore it. And therefore, what happens is the problem persists. And before you know it, the entire world faces the tyranny that we're facing now.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, what's your views on what Steve's just said?
I would broadly agree. I was going to try and explain that tonight, but we got lost in the chat. But yes, I think that's exactly right. I think people are in fact in an extremely negative and disempowered state of mind. What did you say? Ignorance, cowardice, and apathy. And so basically, ignorance, people are not aware of the things that they can do. Cowardice, cowardice is something that you can actually beat with experience. You know, if you have experience confronting your own fear, you can overcome it. But I think people, apathy and cowardice, kind of go together quite closely. These are closely related things. So apathy generates ignorance, and apathy generates cowardice as well, because if you don't have the experience, you'll never generate the courage. Anyway, I wanted to mention something here about the scale of depression in our society, because I think this is actually a sign of something deeper. You know that approximately 2/3 of the people in our society live in various degrees of depression. And that actually reflects pervasive psychological conditioning for social control. So approximately 12 to 15% of the British population at any one time is in moderate to severe depression, clinical depression. But on top of that, there's another 50% of the population that subsists in a subclinical condition called languishing. Now, what is languishing? Languishing is a condition where people effectively have no sense of purpose. They can't achieve anything. They can't get a grip. They have highs and lows of mood. At times they have moments of extroversion, but it's never quite enough to escape the grip of the condition. They don't really have any strategy for dealing with their lives, how to address creating a plan or moving forward. So I think this is really important. So you put 15% along with 50%, you've got 2/3. And, you know, that's pretty much matches the amount of medication that you see as well. So you'd see, for example, in Scotland, 25% of the population are on antidepressant medication. And in England, there aren't statistics gathered the same way in England as there are in Scotland. But GPs estimate the numbers about 21% of the population. So that's a pretty fair indication of the number of people who feel that they're affected by depression. It's a very large percentage of the population. It's staggering. So I mean, it might be worth actually looking at what depression is, because it actually describes what's going on here. So depression's a state of mind. I'm not a psychologist, by the way, but this is, you know, things that are obvious. It's a state of mind. It's being preoccupied with problems and unable to see solutions. Now, it's where people are trapped in linear thought, and they've got habitual patterns of behavior and thought. So, you know, they just think in the same way that leads to unhappiness. They've got low activity, they're disorganized, chaotic, and they've got difficulty in establishing new, healthier patterns of behavior and thought. And they can't break out of it without help. This is the important thing to understand. People who have depression find it very difficult to break out of it by themselves, because it's a trap. All you can see is the problem. You can't see the way out. Now, that really kind of mirrors what I see in the truth movement. Because if you were to go along to a truth movement, if you go along to a meeting, if you were to listen to what they talk about, they're preoccupied with problems and they rarely discuss solutions. Right? They're trapped in habitual patterns of behavior and thought. They talk about the same things again and again, and it never gets forward. They have low activity and low achievement. They never actually achieve anything. They never get any further forward. They're just trapped in a loop, going round and round, talking about the same things again. They're not very organized. They're not very effective. They're marginalized. And they have difficulty establishing new and more effective patterns of behavior and thought. So basically, if you were to look at the truth movement and you look at the description of their activity, what they do, how they think, what they talk about, it's depression. There's something really wrong with how the truth movement thinks about the world, thinks about self.
I agree, but could that be the
So,
diet that we put on? Because a
no,
high
I think
carbohydrate
it's what we
diet
think about.
affects the brain in a negative way. And because our stomach is our second brain. That's why you get a gut feeling. So, sorry, I had to cut in there. I didn't just mention that, but carry on, Nathan. Sorry, mate.
So that may be true, and I think there are a lot of things that contribute to our disempowerment. And I think rather than looking at problems, we might look at solutions. Yes, let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about whether or not actually improving the diet might actually help you feel you've got more energy and a better frame of mind. But one of the things we have to do is actually think about change. We've actually got to think about recognizing that there's a problem and what we can do about it. So at the minute, I think effective people come along to truth meetings and they recognize immediately that there's something unhealthy and that they don't want to come back. Because I hear this. I hear people, who are effective, people who are, say, for example, professionals who work in an environment where they measure their activities in terms of achievement. They come along to a truth group meeting and they'll think, what waste of time? Because they don't have any aims. They just sit around complaining and they never have any intention of any action. It's depressing. Why would anyone want to be a part of that? I think in the truth movement, we really need to look at this, to confront it. So, if we're going to become agents of change, we have to embody a more positive state of mind. We actually have to think about aims and how we're going to achieve them.
Well, I'll tell you something. I used to suffer from depression badly until I changed my diet. And I realised it was diet related. And now it worked for me. Whether it works for other people, I do not know. But it's what we eat. I mean, when you look at the high sugar content and things like that, where they're selling foods in supermarkets that 100 years ago didn't exist. They reckon, was it 95% of the foods they sell now didn't exist 100 years ago? Now, that's something. And the amount of depression in the, say, 1920s, which was about 100 years ago, was very, very low compared with what it is now. Doesn't that make you think? Makes me think. Makes you really wonder. Now, Steve, you think about it. You put something interesting in chat here. And how tall is the Washington Monument? That's my first question. Second question, how tall is Big Ben? The third question is, what symbol points to the West House? That's the third question. The fourth question is, who owns your body? Good point. Over to you, mate.
Well, brilliant. I mean, this is a slightly different way of putting things. So we're talking about solutions, and Nathan so eloquently talks about solutions, and of course mentions a lot of things which are all perfectly relevant. And I'm not going to disagree with a lot of what Nathan has uncovered and talks about. I think he raises some very good points. What I will say though is we'll talk about politics, because many people think that is a political solution. So, but first of all, what we need to do is understand what the problem actually is. So we can't discuss a problem until we actually know what the root of the problem is. And I'm sure, this just makes logical sense. So the root of the problem, if you dissect what we are facing in the world, well, we have got spiritual problems. Spirituality is a
Yes.
measurement of freedom. And, if you were to dissect or analyze what spirituality is, ultimately it's about being in a free state. And I don't just mean living in Florida or somewhere in America. I'm talking about a free state where your threefold processes are self-determined. And when I say threefold processes, that's your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, i.e., you don't suffer from ignorance, apathy, or cowardice. So these three detriments, what's known as the Masonic assassins, are the detriments to people living in a being able to be free, thoughts, emotions, and actions. And when these are restrained by, let's just say, some sort of belief system or governing body, some form of authority, which is forcing through a condition of duress or coercion, manipulation or violence, then we become less able to become free. Therefore, what we've got in the world today, I'm guessing everybody here, everybody in chat will agree that we have got problems with human freedom. We're facing tyranny, we're facing further persecution, we're facing worse conditions, and things are getting more hostile. Therefore, the tyranny is increasing. One thing that's not increasing is freedom. We're becoming less free. Well, there's a dynamic behind that. And this is the important thing to realize. Spiritual problems cannot be solved with political answers. It's an impossibility.
Yes.
So politics, for instance, I never discuss politics. The only time I discuss politics is what measure of ordnance I would use to flatten a particular building. That's it. Because to me, politics is about as useful as drinking a cup of sand. Politics is bullshit. It always will be. And not only that, I can guarantee politics, government, authority is the destruction of freedom. All it offers is the destruction of freedom. So if you wanted a textbook definition of what evil is, bear in mind the word evil is the opposite of live. So, write that down. The opposite of live is evil. Evil defined as the destruction of freedom. So therefore, if we want freedom, you dream on if you think there's going to be a political solution, because there never will be. Not only that, the reason I've mentioned how tall is the Washington Monument. So I'll answer that question. The Washington Monument is 555 foot tall. That equates to 6,660 inches. Right, I'm going to just caveat that because the Washington Monument is also 55 foot wide. 55 feet in inches is 666 inches. Now, I'm just going to put it out there. Does anyone think that's just a crazy coincidence? Now I'm going to talk about Big Ben. Big Ben is in London. Bearing in mind, the Washington Monument is an obelisk, as is Big Ben. What's an obelisk? Well, the obelisk, the word literally means the shaft or the phallus of Baal. Baal being the lord of the underworld. Okay, so the shaft of Baal in Washington, D.C., also equates to the mark of the beast, 666. How tall is Big Ben? No, sorry, it's not 666 feet. It happens to be 322 feet. What is 322? I don't know if you're familiar with that number, but in the dark occult, that number is probably as important as the number 666. Why? Because it denotes what's known as the satanic season of sacrifice. It also denotes more esoterically, it denotes something called the alchemical great work. What is the alchemical great work? It is the process of transmutation between lead and gold. Of course, most people think, well, it's magicians who think they can change base metals. No, it's got nothing to do with that at all. It's to do with changing the dynamics of the human mind from being heavy, dense, and malleable to something precious and everlasting. And there's on the periodic table between the numbers 79 and 82. If we add up the four elements between lead and gold, what number do we get? We'll get the number 322. That's the social, I'm going to say social engineers. The social engineers are an occult priest class of alchemists who have got a very esoteric understanding of what's known as the occult. If you understand the occult, then you understand the problems behind world affairs, because everything is based upon the occult. Everything. So everything government does fits in neatly to occultism. The dates that they use for certain rituals, the location that they use, the time that they use, even things like, if you were to look at, I believe it was Liz Truss, who came out of office in Parliament, in Downing Street after 44 days, very particular number. That was no coincidence. She came out at 12:30. Why? Because that equates to 33, to keep the Freemasons happy. And she also stood behind a three-strand DNA helix lectern. All of these things have got significance and meaning, but the average person, because let's face it, the average person knows jack shit about the occult, so therefore it just completely obliterates their understanding. And even if you were to try to explain to the average person, they wouldn't have a clue. But I'll move on from that. 322 is massive. So what symbol points to the White House? If you don't know, it happens to be an inverted pentagram. It's built into the city infrastructure of Washington, D.C., and it points directly, the lowest apex of what's known as a satanic inverted pentagram, the symbol of Satan, points to the White House. Was that a coincidence? Absolutely not, because Satanism, ideological Satanism, is the mechanism that controls and runs and administers human society. So I'm going to lead straight into question 4. Who owns your body? So I own my body, but sadly, there's an external bunch of psychopathic deviants who claim ownership of it. These same people who adhere to the principles of ideological Satanism also claim ownership over everybody else's body. That's abhorrent, and I'm sure most people would disagree and say, no, actually, I own my body. Well, all I would say is try doing something that the government don't want you to do. And bearing in mind, the government are a bunch of psychopathic Satanists. So the problems in the world are what? Spiritual problems. And unless we understand the occult architecture that governs reality, then we're doomed, because all we'll be doing is we'll be painting the walls on a crumbling building forevermore. And eventually the building will collapse and we'll collapse with it. But we'll have some nice fresh paint on it, because that's all we ever talk about. I hope that makes some sense.
That's very interesting.
Yes, I agree with you. Yes, I think that's what I was trying to come to. So one of the things I keep on hearing about is a spiritual revolution in politics, where people completely reconceive what they're actually trying to do. Conventional politics is normally based upon division, them and us, an opposition. Whereas people who've been through this, what would you call it, spiritual revolution, don't think in those terms. They think about trying to achieve something, about having real aims and how they can bring them about people that they can work with. So they think in positive terms about how to achieve things and the means to do so, and how to cooperate, as opposed to just looking for enemies and people that you disagree with. Confrontation. So yes, it is indeed. I think that is agreeing with you that conventional politics overlooks the real issue, and that is in fact the terms in which we see the world around us and fail to see our own potential.
Well, Frank Zappa, apparently Rocky Road to Love 17, said, politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. And that was said by Frank Zappa, apparently.
Brilliant point. I mean, to elaborate on Nathan's point, I've got to say, politics is, under any flavour, is never going to be the answer to a spiritual problem. It's never, because politics, government, what it does is it claims ownership over people. Well, that right doesn't exist. That's not a natural right. When a person is born, they don't automatically become the possession of any entity outside of themselves. That's a claim of ownership, and that ownership can only be made by two means. One is violence, and the other is mind control. So violence works, and it's worked throughout history. During the feudal periods, etc., violence always worked. But it only worked to a point. It worked to a point, but then what works better than violence as a means to subvert somebody's abilities? Remember this threefold process, which is owning your own thoughts, owning your own emotions, and owning your own actions. That's known as unity consciousness. So what's happened is the world is that fragmented, and that violated under so much mind control that unity consciousness does not exist. The average person, even in the truth community, there's very few people in the truth community have acquired unity consciousness. Why? Because they either don't understand, or they certainly don't speak about something called objective morality. They don't speak about anarchy, and they don't speak about something called natural law. So then, I could say within 10 seconds that the answer to the world's problems is unity consciousness, the non-aggression principle, self-ownership, and natural law. That comes part and parcel with a condition of anarchy. But as soon as I mention the word anarchy, most people would just think you're an absolute imbecile and run a mile, because they're absolutely dog shit stupid. And they won't even bother their asses to look into these conditions or these factors, which are all occulted, which means hidden. These factors are occult, hidden information that is basically ensured a power dynamic between those who know and those who don't. And sadly, the truth movement as a majority do not understand the occult in sufficient detail. Therefore, the hidden information that's completely annihilating them and their hope and aspirations to acquire freedom is totally lost on them. Why? Because they simply don't understand the fundamental dynamics of geometry, the geometry of the universe. That's why you've got the G in the middle of the square and compass for anybody who hasn't studied secret societies. Again, all the occultists who understand these things, this is why they've got ownership of our minds, because we don't understand the principles that they employ upon us.
Well, Alice Gorgeous, excellent. Alice Gorgeous says we don't need politics. We need unity. We need unity, but self-governance. Yes, I'd agree with that. And an interesting one is what Matilda has said. The government has broken every one of the 10 commandments. Interesting.
The government, can I just expand on that? I don't abide. I say I don't abide. I don't follow the religious 10 commandments simply because what they relate to is the kind of the fabricated, what's known as the governing principles of natural law. What is more relevant is not the religious sense; it's the occult sense. Natural law has transgressions. So to transgress natural law, there's 7 principles that can transgress natural law, which are all harmful and violate every human being's fundamental rights. Those things are murder, trespass, theft, assault, rape, deceit, and coercion. All of these things, the government cannot exist without employing all of these transgressions of natural law. So anyone, and I'll say this to anybody who still thinks that politics or some form of government is an answer to the world's problems, government will never, ever, 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 ever be an answer to gain peace or freedom. Why? Because in order to exist, government transgress all 7 violations of natural law. It can't take tax, for example. It can't tax somebody without employing theft. It can't employ theft without gaining your consent, which requires deceit and coercion. If you choose not to be robbed by the government in a form of tax, then you will face violence and assault. If you live in some country, in fact, even in the UK, armed cops will shoot you dead if you do not abide by what the cops tell you to do. Bearing in mind, the cops are just order following fuckwits who just think that they've got the right just to employ whatever they want to do that the government tell them to do. But why? Because they're thick as mints. Every copper in the I'll say this again. Every copper in the world needs to resign. Every soldier in the world needs to resign. They need to grow up. They need to apply the principles of natural law and acquire unity consciousness. Sadly, so does everybody else. Until unity consciousness under natural law is applied, we're just dreaming on about this aspiration for freedom. It has that something requirements, and those requirements are simply not met.
I agree. Over to you, Nathan. What's your view on that?
So I think you'd have to be a little bit clearer and it'd be about what this unity consciousness actually consists of and how attainable it actually is. So it's like what you're describing is like a state of divine anarchy where everyone acts according to moral principles. But in a real world, we're talking about human beings, and we're a long way from. I mean, how do we make the transition from where we are to where we need to be? What happens between where we are and where we need to be? How do we make people get along in an adequate way until they achieve the required level of consciousness?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can quickly answer that. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm inviting you to be please, yes. I mean, fundamentally, just to elaborate on what you said, unity consciousness is being able to align one's thoughts, emotions, and actions, i.e., the way we behave. So it is a human thing. This isn't. You don't have to become Jesus Christ. You don't have to be zapped by aliens. Every human being is capable of this. It involves aligning one's thoughts, emotions, and actions towards what's known as objective reality. Objective morality. So just please let me define what that is, because it's very simple. Morality is the fundamental difference between right and wrong. So most people say, well, I know the fundamental difference between right and wrong. Well, I'd actually disagree. I'd actually say probably 99.9% of the world's population don't know the difference between right and wrong. Why? Because they demonstrate their understanding or their lack of understanding through their actions. So most people on Earth would agree that the government is required in order to create peace and harmony. That's absolutely ridiculous, because government use violence, they transgress all the fundamental principles of natural law in order to operate. So therefore, government can never bring peace and freedom. They'll do the opposite, and they always will. But therefore, most people believe that to be true. Therefore, they don't understand the difference between right and wrong. So what is a right? Well, a right is any action that causes no harm to any other being. So as an example, and I've used this one before, if I decide to grow cannabis and then smoke it or sell it to one of my neighbors, that is a right. I possess that right because that belongs to nature. That right belongs to nature. Nobody can tell me that I can't smoke cannabis because it's not harming anybody other than perhaps myself. And incidentally, I don't smoke cannabis, just putting that out there. Sometimes I'll eat edible cannabis products. Very rarely, to be quite honest, but that's against the law. Why? Because other people have deemed, and these are where the dark occultists come in, other people have declared that they've got the ability to transcend the laws of nature. They've become gods on earth, and they've decided to profiteer at the expense of others by limiting their fundamental rights and freedoms. So all coppers, every copper in the world is an immoral human being, simply because they enable other people to profiteer others by destroying their rights. So what is a wrong? A wrong is any action that causes harm to any other living being. That's it. That's right and wrong. And if we look and analyze that with a more clearer mindscape, we will realize that practically the entire human race is involved in wrongdoing. Why? Because it claims ownership of other people, then it claims the right to be able to transcend the natural laws inherent to creation.
It's very good. Yeah, very good. The thing is that someone here said, was it Alice Gordon says, common law is no harm, no loss. We need a clear conscience. We're all complicit in evil if we stay
100%.
silent. And there was, now who said it a little way back about, this is it. Rocky Road to Love 17 says, yes, they won't employ you to be a member of the fuzz, shall we say? Well, that's an old-fashioned term. If you're too smart, low IQ is an absolute requirement for their entry exams. That's true. That is 100% true. They don't want people too intelligent. Have you noticed it? Now. But the fact is that how are we going to get out of what I call the hole that we're in at the moment? How are we going to get out of it? I mean,
So,
we can educate
if I
it,
can
but
just
certainly.
if I can just say, I don't think, with respect, Steve, you quite answered the question of how we're going to get from where we are now to where you want us to be, and what that process would involve.
Okay. I mean, if you like, I'll put it into three distinct means. Well, if I can do it in three things. So one thing I will, if anyone's on my Occult Academy channel that I share with Nathan Lucius, one thing I will say, in order to get this level of comprehension, and bearing in mind I'm potentially one of the thickest people, out there, because I used to be a soldier. I used to, be a killer for money. That makes me an immoral piece of trash. However, I completely changed my understanding simply because I had a moral education through understanding occult principles of natural law. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. So I'm throwing that out there. Secondly, what I will talk about is precision education, battle winning and a battle winning mindset. So that means our heads have got to be in the right place. We've got to desire this. It's got to be a heart-based intelligence driving us forward. We've got to want to gain freedom and greater peace. Second to that, precision education. That means we can't just keep on bluffing our way through the world expecting the answers just to reveal themselves. We have to learn occult education. It's as simple as that. The stuff that they hide from us and they employ against us, we have to then start to understand. This needs to be educated to more and more people, but simply what we do need to learn is morality. Morality is knowing the difference between right and wrong. So, for instance, and I'll put this in easy terms, if you think the government is a force for good, you haven't got a clue about morality, because therefore you've just realized you can't understand that government or use violence and tyranny to enslave people, and they do not possess that right. Nobody possesses the right to own another human being. It's all mind control. Mind control is immoral. Therefore, anyone who thinks there's a political solution, no offense, but you're absolutely way off the mark. You need to learn morality. Morality is a product or an understanding of natural law. Natural law needs to be understood by more people. So the people in the truth movement need to understand natural law, and they need to start educating friends, families, neighbors, and beyond. And until the world goes through, don't get me wrong, it's going to be hard as can be. That's why they call it in alchemy the great work, because it's like the hardest thing you're ever going to achieve is to change somebody's worldview, to change them from ideological Satanism to become moral human beings. And I hate to say it, I used to be an immoral, satanically minded piece of trash when I was a soldier. And within a short space of time, receiving a moral education, I completely changed my understanding of the way nature and the world worked. So I don't know if that answers your question, Nathan.
So I'll just try and spell this out a bit. So you think that what it takes is a process of education, and this will change individuals' perspectives. Now, let's talk about society. I would surmise that you think when enough people have received this moral education, the change in society will come about naturally. Is that
If
right?
effectively, if people have got the battle winning mentality to drive this through to completion, then yes, it will. It's a given that if enough people in society want to stop being tyrannized, because they then realize that they actually own their own body and nobody has that right to tell them otherwise, then they can gain self ownership, the self determination to become moral human beings in the world. I mean, if people don't, well, the facts will speak for themselves. If we face further tyranny, it's because basically we've not given enough of a crap to strive for the freedom that we say we want.
And what determines the critical mass of people that need to be educated? How many people do they need to be? I mean, we're not talking in terms of, let's say an arbitrary number. We're talking about what sort of condition has to be met.
Okay, I mean, I could put a number on that, and simply because this is what the dark occultists do. Are you familiar with Beltane, May the 1st, Area 51?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just allow me a minute or two to explain this. May the 1st is a period in the pagan calendar known as Beltane, the fires of Baal. Baal is Bel. The fires of Baal. Baal is the lord of the underworld. And of course, that date is significant. Why? Because it's also the birthday of the Illuminati. Whether that's real or fictional, who knows? But that's the birthday of the Bavarian Illuminati. Right. So the reason why that's important, well, who died on May the 1st? Adolf Hitler. Well, his death was announced on May the 1st. He actually died on Walls Spurgis. When I say died, fake suicide, whatever you think. Who else died, or who else's death was reported on that date? Osama bin Laden. Why? Because it's May the 1st. How did they celebrate? How did government celebrate their satanic calendar? Well, they do rituals on satanic holy dates, and they've done that for hundreds of years. And they've done so many. The whole of COVID was based on the satanic calendar and satanic numerology. I'm quite happy to go spend 3 hours talking about all the 666s involved in that little satanic ritual that most people think, well, we'll forgive the government for that because we'll just move on. We'll just get a better leader such as Rupert Lowe. This is how, I hate to say it, this is how dumb people are. If they can't grasp that Satanism is being driven right in front of their face and they still want more of it, then there's something wrong with the human condition. But where was I going with that? May the 1st, it also equates to a number, the 5th month, the first date, and that number is 51, as in Area 51. 51 is important in their little dark satanic world because this is the amount of the power differential that they need in order to create the conditions of their empowerment. 51%. That's the way they look at it. So if they've got 51% of people dumb as bricks who will just do everything that they tell them to do, that's all they need to do. So fundamentally, if we can change that dynamic and we can take 51% of the power geometry to ourselves, then...
So you think it's just a simple majority?
Yeah.
Yeah, a simple majority. So, so you think that if we can achieve this education process in a simple majority of the population, at that point, society will be radically transformed.
Yeah.
And there will be, and the process will just happen naturally by itself.
Naturally, yeah. Because people will align their thoughts, emotions, and actions into objective morality. So I don't know who said this. I think it was a philosopher called Schopenhauer who quoted that truth follows in 3 stages. First, it is violently opposed. Then it is then it is ridiculed, and then it is taken on board as self-evident, or words to that effect. Now, when natural law, bearing in mind, natural law, it's not my belief, it's not a religious system, it's not something I've just made up, it's not something I pulled out of a cracker. It is the governing dynamics of how reality functions. That means it is formulated upon human behavior. What the conditions that we experience in the world are formulated on human behavior. When we, as an aggregate, i.e., let's just say 51, it's a bit of an arbitrary number, by the way, but as an aggregate, i.e., the majority, when the majority of people are under significant mind control, that they fail to understand morality because they become moral relativists, i.e., they don't align to objective morality, they employ, through their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, immoral behaviors. And most people probably don't even realize they're doing it. When people are voting for Rupert Lowe, they're basing their stupidity upon immorality. And most people haven't got a clue that they're actually doing that. When I was a soldier, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought killing people in a third world nation was actually good for the country. No, it wasn't. It was only good for the international banking cartel, the Rothschilds, and all the other tosspots who seem the trillionaire tosspots who run the world. That's all war's good for, and that's all war's invented for, to keep these tosspots in wealth. That's it. And I've been to enough war zones to realize that's an objective fact. It's all bullshit. If you want to end war, you need to end government. My job wouldn't exist if there wasn't a government. People in the third world countries wouldn't get bombed to oblivion if there was no government, because people are programmable. That means I was programmed as an imbecile, along with the rest of 80,000 other imbeciles in the British Army, to go and do horrible things to largely innocent people. If we get rid of that understanding, we become more versed in morality. We'll realize that police and military should not exist. Shouldn't exist. There's no scope for it at all. But we're not there yet. Most dumbos on the planet think that you need a police force, otherwise violent thugs will take over. Hello, the violent thugs have just poisoned 6 billion people with air. And we can't get into there that, there's something wrong with this picture.
I agree with you. That's spot on. But people, I don't know. You're right about education. We've got to be educated, because it's true what Yuri Bezmenov said about education. Teach them anything. What is it now? Urban survival, natural food, but nothing that is of any use whatsoever. And that's exactly what's happening to our education system now. People are coming out of school dumb. And when I was at school, it was the same. People were coming out of school dumb. I think for all our education, it was you didn't really learn anything as much. But now it says here, Haji says 51%. It's not that complicated if you're a majority stakeholder in a company. Wakey. Well, the way I look at it is look at it at mass formation theory. And I've said this many times before. 30% of people will believe everything the government says. They're dead from the neck upwards. Don't waste your time with them. They're dead, gone. 40% of the people go with the flow. And 30% of the people like us, we're awake to what's going on. But I believe all it needs is just 5% of that 40% that go with the flow to come over to our side, and that tips the balance. So our job is not that hard. Mm-hmm. Not that hard when you think of it, So
it's only hard if we allow it to be hard and we literally just give up. Like I said, there's 3 factors that govern the human condition, and it's all based on our behavior, but our behavioral output, which is thoughts, emotions, and actions. If we, and again, please, it might not make sense at first, but when we kind of give ourselves time to process this and contemplate, philosophize over these points, it does. And don't get me wrong, this took me years to realize, because I'm a thicko. I'm just a daft Geordie lug, a squaddy who was brainwashed for pretty much his entire life.
I
So it took
disagree
me
with you
quite
there.
well. No, it did. It did, Eric. It took me quite a lot of time to get this through because
But it
my
took a long
mind
time for
wasn't.
me to wake up to what's going on. It takes time for all of us to do. And we've got to
But
go through those experiences at the University of Life to get those qualifications. So you
I
went through the
agree,
University of Life
but
to
we
get those
are probably the
qualifications.
last generation.
Mm.
I'm in my 50s. We're the last generation who have got the ability to guide the younger generations into a life of
Right.
betterment outside of an external influence, which is based in immorality, a death cult. And let's face it, I showed you some of the statistics. This is just some of them. The government employs Satanism as their ideological principles. That's why they use certain dates in the satanic calendar. That's why they build monuments 666 inches tall, etc., etc. And I could pinpoint loads of examples like that. Why do they do that if they had the best interests of the human population at heart? Because they don't. They're a satanic death cult. That's why. Just look at what's going on in Epstein Island, and that's only the stuff that they put on the blinking TV to keep the hapless morons, in the human population encapsulated into still perpetuating the belief in government. Oh, there's some dark stuff going on a celebrity island. Oh, well, the government need to do something. Yeah, the government will be doing that forevermore because they maintain power by keeping us in mind control. Mind control is immoral, and it's
Mm.
always going to be that way until we get the intelligence to realize that immorality is the driving factor behind all the world's problems and do something to change that thoughts, emotions, and actions. Then I'm given alchemical esoteric principles here. This isn't my stuff. This is the stuff I've acquired through all these books behind me. This is all make believe stuff. It takes a lot of books on the occult to come up with this understanding. However, luckily, because of the internet and because of researchers who have dedicated themselves to the occult and they've read all these books and they've followed the process of what's known as the trivium to reach an understanding based upon truth and principle, they've acquired a simple, generated understanding that can be related to more and more people.
Well, shortly we're going to be saying goodbye to Food for Thought Radio. It's coming up to the time. It's about 2 minutes to 10. But we'll be carrying on Rumble, YouTube.
This is Mark, the bowler hat farmer, here at Food for Thought Radio. We're going to be bringing you up-to-date news on what's happening in the...
He's gone off. Oh, well, Mark.
Quick.
Was it? Hang on. Was it something? Our underarm deodorant or something? Something we said, you know. Well, I don't know whether we said goodbye to Food for Thought Radio or not, but we probably have. So, ta-ta, you Food for Thought Radio. I'm sorry about that. I didn't press any buttons or anything. It's just it comes on automatically. But I think that government carry with it poverty, strife, and everything that's negative in life. When you just look through the history of government, where there's government, there's poverty. They create. OXO says yes. Cluck moo oi. Yeah, we could do that. Cluck moo oi. But the fact of the matter is, where there's government, there are these problems, and there's very few countries in the world where there isn't these problems. There's only one I can think of, and that's Switzerland, because Switzerland hasn't got poverty, so they say. There's people that's less well off than others, but Switzerland is pretty comfortable off.
That's
Why?
because that's where the Illuminati store the gold.
Precisely, is where all the bleeding banks are. And they're also, believe it or not, Ashkenazi in origin. And they converted to Catholicism along with Sicilians who are Ashkenazi in origin. They come from Ukraine, the Swiss, because they've got very different DNA from the rest of Europe. That's something. But the Swiss, if you think about it, where has government been good for the people? I can't think of any place. Initially, in 1933, Mr. H was good, but unfortunately that didn't last very long. We just sort of went pear-shaped. But that's only for some people. But when you think about it, government is a thorn in our sides. Always has been. You know? But anyway, I can hear myself feedback. I think there might be somebody. Have you got speakers on anybody? I know you're all right, Steve. I think Nathan. It might be Steve. I think your speakers might be giving us feedback.
Me?
Oh no, you got anyway. As long as people can't hear it in the chat or on the audience can't hear it, that's it. But what's this guy? Hatchy. I'd share a tent with Steve overnight. He'd be quite safe. Yes. I'll tell you one thing though. In your operations in the army, you must have been in areas where there's snakes. Now, that's one particular creature on earth that I do have a problem with. There's something about snakes I don't like. I mean, did you ever encounters of them, like slithering into your tent at night and thinking, hang on, what's this? In the
No, I'd
or
more,
scorpions?
more encounters with big nasty spiders like camel spiders. So I
Really?
wouldn't want one of them in my sleeping bag. That's for sure. Yeah.
Because I know my dad. Really? I mean, what about scorpions? My dad woke up when he was in the Middle East, rather, and there was a scorpion looking at him on the side of his pillow. There's a pillow. Yeah, there's a scorpion there.
Oh, I had some of the lads I work with got bitten by scorpions. They were in quite a lot of pain with scorpion bites from.
Really?
So yeah, you want to avoid them.
I thought they kill you, don't they? I thought they're deadly.
Oh, they can, yeah.
But because did you know that there's a breed of scorpion on a station? I'm not sure. Is it Hainault on in Essex? And they're only around that area, but they're not dangerous. There's small ones, and they might give you a bit of a nip, but they're not going to harm you at all. The same as a spider's nip, probably, you know. But someone Alice Gorgeous says that she'll wash your socks for you.
That's very kind.
Oh, hang on. I'd make him breakfast. Blimey. Do you have a problem like Nathan and I have at night? You know, in the early hours of the morning, there's, you know, women on a ladder tapping on the window and that type of thing. You know? I wish.
I think it's the hair. They just want to run their fingers through my hair.
Remember that Peter Cook and Dudley in the Moor sketch? Oh, yes. I was woken up in the early hours of the morning. Really, yes. Bleeding Greta Garbo tapping on my window. You know? Anyway, fellas, excuse us zooming off a little bit, but I'm absolutely cream crackered. I was up at 5 this morning, so but yeah, I do get up early. Thank you very much for joining us, Nathan, Steve. Cracking show. I've really enjoyed it. We got some really good points over, and I'm sure we'll continue this conversation on future shows very soon. Nathan, have you got anything to say before we sign off at all?
We've got to realise that the future is in our own hands, and you know, it's up to us to try and do something. What we mustn't do is just hope that somebody else will do it for us. We're the ones who've got to make the difference.
Yeah, that's
right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Can I add
certainly
a point?
Over to you, mate. Yeah. I was going to come to you next.
Thank you. It's literally just to say that obviously I fire quite a lot of information that to some people might be completely new to them, or that it's hard to expand and elaborate on stuff in sufficient detail to come to an adequate conclusion. You know, I'm not expecting anybody to do so, because what I would like is, if anyone's unfamiliar with some of the points I've made, natural laws not quite their thing, or they don't quite understand or appreciate or value what I'm saying, please either look up into my own work in the Occult Academy, and if my work or Nathan's work in the Occult Academy is not to their cup of tea, for instance, Fake Awake, it's all written in there. If people aren't keen on that, we do recommend and advise other researchers, other other people who understand this and educate people on this stuff. The information's out there. I'd quite happily point people in the right direction to it. So thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on, Steve, because quite honestly, the country is tits up, and it always will be whilst there's a government. I think that's my view. And I mean, what's your view on that, Nathan? So I'm carrying on a little bit. Do you think government is a waste? We need government, or don't need government?
It's certainly not the solution here. The solution is in us. It's in our hands, not in theirs.
Yes. And Hatchie summed it up. Oh, by the way, Aunt Sally's on. By the way, Aunt Sally, are you in the bath? Just getting out of the bath, or we need to put your camera on so we can check this out? Okay. Forget voting. Unite in community, and they won't like it. Spot on. And Alice Gorgeous says, Steve, most people I speak to are awake to the tyranny. What's the next step?
I mean, brilliant. So, and this is I'll be quick on this because I know I tend to go off on tangents.
Oh, it's okay.
A lot of people have woken up. A lot of people who in the general community are starting to see tyranny and starting to get a little bit aggravated by the situations they find themselves in. But let's say the people who have woken up, literally, the answers are aligning one's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors towards objective morality by understanding the governing principles behind the way reality is formulated. That's known as natural law. And until that reaches an aggregated understanding, i.e., by more people in the community, especially the freedom community who can go out and teach it, then we're literally going to be at the back foot, always behind the curve on the power dynamics, which are driven by Satanists. So the choice is ours. Do we want to live in a world which adheres to ideological Satanism, or do we want a better world for our children and our future, our own future?
Well, we want a better world for everything. I want to see people happily. I tell you what, little things. Once upon a time, when I was a nipper, and you probably remember this, we used to have bakers and people coming round delivering things, and they was always whistling, happy. Where's that gone? You know, mind you, there was a bloke. Have you ever been in a situation? But you feel like kicking. This sounds rude. You feel like kicking someone up the arse. And now there's this situation in the supermarket the other day. They had this nondescript music going, you know, that sort of crap music. And there's a bloke whistling to it out of tune. And the feeling that I wanted to kick him up the arse was really strong. Bonk. Right. Now, Aunt Sally, I'm afraid hotline news is she's out of the shower. So, no, out of the bath, right? That's it. Alice Gorgeous is subbed out of the bath. That's it. Where is it? Areas. I was out. Yes, out of the bath. So that's good. We'd like to know that. And I 100% agree with Alex Gorgeous. Paying tax is criminal because you name it something different. It's theft. Of course, because you call it tax. I mean, if I come and went round my neighbour's doors and knocked on their door and said, £100, please. I said, what for? So tax. I said, well, it's sod off. But if I was dressed as a government official or in a police's uniform and went to an area I don't know and said, £100, please, most people cough up. Oh, he's in a uniform. We must need it. You know,
Yeah.
This is the thing.
That's how the mind control works.
Yeah.
We've been conditioned to believe that authority and somebody in a uniform has always got the moral upper hand. But of course, that's not true. Everyone is born equal. All men and women are born equal. Some believe that they've got rights that do not exist in the natural world. Then they've applied force or coercion in order to thwart their gain upon us. It's unholy. It's immoral. And until we become self-empowered with the understanding of our natural rights and the natural laws that accompany the way the universe functions, and again work in harmony to that. As an example, if we want to improve our health, we then consume natural foods, stuff that we've grown from the ground, stuff that we haven't poisoned with GMO or fertilizer garbage. We eat natural produce and we become healthier. Same with the universe. If we employ natural law, the universe
And we think
functions
differently.
healthier. Yeah, of course.
And I mean, you change your diet, you do feel. I mean, since I changed my diet, I feel a heck of a lot better. But I think the difference between humanity and government is if if human beings are in a boat and they see some poor sod drowning, they'll go over to that poor sod and pull them out because that's a humane thing to do. Pull them out of the sea or wherever it is.
Mm.
If a government's in a boat, they'll go over to them and say, "Excuse me, we need to know, have you got your national insurance number? Who are you? What are you doing there? What nationality are you?" Before they pull the poor sod out, where the poor sod will be drowned before they do anything, you know. But Matilda on this one says, same with believing doctors are prescribing drugs to help you. Just because
Brilliant
their
point.
doctors has been to university and can recite the BMJ verbatim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah.
And that's the same principle that makes soldiers do what they do and police do what they do. I mean, as a soldier, we thought we force death or violence upon people. Why? Because we're told to, and we got a manual, just like the BMJ. The doctors have got the BMJ. We had manuals to tell us that all of the stuff we were doing was acceptable. No, it's not. It's absolutely wrong, because why? Murder is immoral. It's as simple as that. And if somebody forces you to murder somebody, no matter who or what authority they claim to have, it's always going to be immoral.
Well, I think that you look at the kamikaze pilots of World War II, Japanese kamikaze pilots. They were teenagers. They were conned into it. And their loss of life, what for?
Mm.
What for? Who gives a shit about them now?
Mhm.
That's sad. Who gives a
is.
shit about the amount of people who got killed in wars? What for? You know, and one day, someone. I mean, Russia was an ally to this. Well, was an ally, but they were with us during World War II. Now they're talking about war with Russia in Ukraine and things. I mean, you look at Ukraine now. I don't know the full technicalities of it, but there's Russian-speaking Ukrainians fighting Russians. I mean, it's a bit like England fighting Wales or Scotland now. I mean, it's almost unthinkable, but it's happening. You know, but
especially when you realise who actually profiteers from this equation, because the soldiers will never do so. Just like the cops will never profiteer from their belief that they're maintaining law and order. No, it's just a profiteering racket for the trillionaire banking cartel and the dark occult international career criminals. That's the only people who are ever gonna. We're slaves for these imbeciles.
Well, that's right.
Remember.
Well, Alice Goulder says it's for your safety. Bloody inverted world. Well, I walked into a shop the other day, a big department store, and there's announced over the loudspeaker, for your safety, we have cameras operating in this store. For your safety. Well, is the bleeding roof going to fall in if the cameras are not there? I mean, is the building unsafe? Has the building inspector been around it? I mean, what are they on about? For your safety. Why? Doesn't make any... It's not logical, is it? Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much tonight. Fantastic show. Thank you, everybody in chat. And I believe Paul English is coming up this Thursday at 8 o'clock on Rumble and Food for Thought Radio. And please join us next week. I don't know who the guest is. Hang on. Who's coming on next week? I think you are, Steve, aren't you?
Oh, God. People not sick of me yet. I think I'm on the 18th. Rings a bell. Get Mark Barr on.
Hang on. Mark. Let's have a quick go on. Mark Barr?
Yeah, get Mark Barr on. He's a
you know him?
Yeah.
Is he really? Yeah, well, you can come. What we got here now? What's today's date? It's 11th today, isn't it? And the 17th. Next Sunday is free, and next Monday there's some geezer called Survival Steve coming on.
Oh, not that idiot.
Well,
Yeah.
we can would Mark Barr come on with you?
Yeah, he would, I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, you know,
I'll give him a heads up.
okay. Has he spoken on radio before?
Oh, he's got his own podcast.
Oh, I look him up.
Yeah, he does the Coop Files. That's a great one, by the way. If people don't like my tone of voice, Mark Barr talks about natural law, and he's a lot more eloquent than I am, and
Mark
very
Barr.
knowledgeable. So yeah, the Coop Files on YouTube, COOP.
Right, hang on. I'll write that down. That's Mark.
By the way, while Eric's mentioning that, natural law is not something I invented. This is the laws of creation invented by the creator of the universe. It's the understanding of these laws which is what brings us into alignment with objective morality. All we have to do is realize that there's something bigger than us. Mankind doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel was already invented. It was invented by the creator of the universe. That's all we need to do. Realize that and put it into practice.
And the next generation won't understand what this is. It's a diary, and this is all the stuff that I put in it to remind me, and it works very well. It's as old as the hills. I don't need a battery for it. It's no software in there. It's just an ordinary diary. And look at the stuff I got in there. I mean, I've even got here. What was it? Oh yeah, this is the water filter that I need. Yes, I've actually got a zero water filter. And I made it last over 3 months.
Excellent.
And the way I do it, I decant it through one of these first, and then from there into the zero water filter. Because the water down here is being passed by the local council. It tastes like it, you know. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much, everybody. And remember, give a thumbs up and consider subscribing. You know, it's free. So you don't, you know, and also tell others, because it really does help us a lot. And whatever happens, have a bloody good laugh. And good night.